Elric of Melniboné is one of modern fantasy's oldest and most unique characters, one who has inspired The Witcher, Marvel Comics, and was even the subject of a rock song by Blue Oyster Cult. Created in 1961 by author Michael Moorcock, Elric is an ailing, albino, angsty character. And without him, we may have never gotten the various ailing, angsty members of House Targaryen. A Song of Ice and Fire is a medley of influences from other works. It's a culmination of all the stories George R.R. Martin loves to read, like Lord of the Rings, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and Dune. It incorporates real history as well, like the 100 Years' War between France and England, or the Black Dinner in Scotland. George R.R. Martin has scattered references to Elric all throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, and I think that in order to better understand Martin's world, we should look to the past and talk about what inspired him. So in this video, I'm going to introduce Elric of Melniboné, the White Wolf, and where he shows up in the world of Ice and Fire. Elric of Melniboné is the 428th and final Emperor of Melniboné, the Dragon Isle. He is a direct descendant to the very first Sorcerer Emperor of Melniboné, thousands of years ago. Elric is one of many incarnations of the Eternal Champion, a being who exists simultaneously across the multiverse, whose goal is to secure a cosmic balance between law and chaos. The Eternal Champion is a doomed figure, one who can never rest, never truly die, and never truly love. Elric is the son of Emperor Cedric the 86th, and grew up the sole heir to the Ruby Throne. Elric's mother died while giving birth to him, and Cedric blamed Elric for her death. Elric laments that his father never sired more children, for then a more suitable monarch might have been available to take his place on the Ruby Throne. Therein lies the key difference between Elric and every other inhabitant of Melniboné. Elric has humility and a conscience. Melnibonéans aren't exactly humans. The humans inhabit the Young Kingdoms, which entirely surround the island of Melniboné, which is all that's left of their once great empire. Melnibonéans are callous, cold people, gifted in sorcery, and said to be descended from dragons. Elric is unlike his subjects both in his values and his physical appearance. His flesh is pale, the color of a bleached skull. His eyes are a moody crimson color. His hair is long and milk white. You see, Elric is an albino, and he was sickly from the time of his birth. He is kept alive only by rare herbs that artificially give him strength. If he goes too long without taking them, Elric starts to weaken and die. Elric is the Emperor of Melniboné, ruling from the Ruby Throne in Imrir, the Dreaming City. The citizens of the Dreaming City are often high on psychedelic drugs, for it was in their dreams that the nobles of Melniboné found most of their pleasures. They had ever been a moody, inward-looking race. Elric has no immediate family, but his two cousins live with him at court. His cousin Yyrkoon is his greatest rival. He represents the core traditional beliefs of Melnibonéans, many of whom think Elric is a weak ruler, who cares not for the pride and greatness of his race. Yyrkoon is a powerful sorcerer just like Elric, and makes several attempts to usurp his cousin's throne and become the emperor he feels Melniboné deserves. Cimoril is Yyrkoon's sister and Elric's other cousin. She is Elric's closest companion and the love of his life, though Yyrkoon too lusts for her. It's an angsty, incestuous love triangle. Cimoril struggles to understand Elric's sense of morality just like everyone else, but she is fiercely loyal to Elric, and hates her brother Yyrkoon for plotting against him. Moorcock's world exists in an eternal struggle between law and chaos, and Melnibonéans much prefer to serve chaos, which has made them cruel and violent. Chaos is not inherently evil, however, and neither is law inherently good. Law and chaos must exist in balance, or else one side will grow out of control. Law and chaos are a lot like ice and fire. If either triumphs, the world will end. If chaos or fire wins, the world burns. Everything dies in an inferno. War will tear apart the land. If law or ice wins, The world freezes over. Life is preserved, but it becomes static and dogmatic in its lawful virtue. If the Eternal Champion wishes to usher in a war between the Lords of Law and the Lords of Chaos, they must blow the Horn of Fate. In A Song of Ice and Fire, the Horn of Winter is said to be able to bring down the wall and usher in a war with the others. A balance must be struck between law and chaos, or between ice and fire. Elric wants to achieve this balance, and if you believe Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, Jon is an embodiment of this balance, part ice and part fire. Could his destiny be to defeat the ice magic of the others and restore balance with the fire magic of dragons? Maybe or maybe not, but that's a topic for another time. Melniboné, the Dragon Isle, is extremely similar to Valyria, another fallen empire of human-ish dragon lords. Both Melniboné and Valyria are small islands relative to the total land they had control over. Both are the capitals of their empires, and are ruled by a race of magical beings with control of dragons. Both Melnibonéans and Valyrians used their magic and their dragons to expand their empires, and after thousands of years of dominance, both empires were reduced to a single island, Melniboné in Moorcock's world, and Dragonstone in Martin's world. However, Melniboné declined due to their own apathy, not a foreign threat or cataclysm. Most Melnibonéans believe that they could reconquest the world and reclaim their former glory. But Elric does not share this lust for dominance. Valyria, on the other hand, was destroyed by the Doom of Valyria, a mysterious cataclysm that left the race scattered across the continent of Essos, and the only true Dragonlord remnants were the Targaryen family on Dragonstone. Another difference was in their government systems. Melniboné is ruled by a single monarch, the Emperor, who rules with absolute authority. Valyria was an oligarchy, ruled by over 40 dragon-riding families. These were the freeholders in the Valyrian freehold, the dragonlords who owned land and dragons, and thus power. They elected archons to represent them in government, and all the noble families, the Targaryens amongst them, had a say in the governance of the Valyrian Empire. Melnibonéans and Valyrians are abusive, cruel overlords who have profited thanks to slavery. In Valyria, slaves were captured during conquest, or they were bred during peacetime. Many were forced to gather precious ore in the sweltering volcanic mines of the 14 Flames volcano system, where thousands upon thousands of slaves died due to exhaustion, a cave collapse, or the odd fireworm attack. The death toll was so high that it was beyond comprehension. Melnibonéans are similarly depraved. They torture their slaves, cut out their tongues, and surgically manipulate them to sing one perfect note each, all for the amusement of the nobles at court. Melnibonéan slaves are the most frequent users of Imrir's psychedelic plants. The dreams dull their mental and physical pain, but it makes the slaves easier to control. Elric is physically similar to the standard Valyrian, with his white skin and silver hair, though most Melnibonéans have dark hair. Elric's is uniquely white because he is an albino. Elric bears more striking similarities to specific members of House Targaryen, most notably Brynden Rivers, or Bloodraven. Bloodraven is George R. R. Martin's own albino sorcerer with the blood of dragons. I did a whole video on him, so check that out if you're interested in eugenics and prophecy. Brynden Rivers is one of the many bastard children of King Aegon IV Targaryen. He's an albino just like Elric, and shares his milk-white skin and long silver hair, as well as a red right eye. The left eye was slashed out by his half-brother Bittersteel during the First Blackfire Rebellion. Bloodraven and Bittersteel hated each other, and fought for the love of their half-sister, Shiera Seastar. This incestuous love triangle mirrors that of Elric, Yyrkoon, and Cimmeril. Shiera became Bloodraven's paramour, and they became a dynamic duo of sorceress string pullers within the Red Keep. Just as Elric is the albino emperor, Bloodraven is the albino hand of the king for 2 Targaryen monarchs. Elric and Brynden also both wield magical black swords. The Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister for Brynden, forged with ancient Valyrian spells, and sharper than any other known substance. and Stormbringer, the soul-drinking blade with a mind of its own, for Elric. More on Stormbringer later in the video. Their physical similarities are plenty, but Bloodraven diverges heavily from Elric in terms of personality. Elric abdicates his throne to his rival Yyrkoon, showcasing his utter disinterest in ruling an empire of slave-owning sorcerers who have a fetish for racial superiority. Bloodraven, though never becoming king himself, ruled Westeros for 24 years as Hand for Aerys I and Mycor I. Whereas Elric did not care for the strength of his dynasty, Bloodraven worked tirelessly to bolster Targaryen rule and influence, using a vast network of spies and warging ravens, and possibly even glamoring himself as a knight to keep an eye on what treasons were being done in his kingdom. A closer comparison in terms of personality is Elric and Aegon III Targaryen, another character who George Martin was likely very inspired by Elric to write. This section will contain spoilers for the ending of House of the Dragon, so to avoid those, skip here if you need to. Elric of Melniboné is a very introspective, brooding man. He isn't physically imposing, in part due to his various conditions that keep him frail and dependent on drugs. Instead of training all day with a sword, Elric read every book in his father's vast library. His reading has also taught him to question the uses to which power is put, to question his motives, to question whether his own power should be used at all, in any cause. This question about Elric's own power is a major developing theme in his stories, going so far as to abandon Melniboné completely and destroy the dreaming city Imrir. Aegon III is called the Dragonbane because he hated dragons, and the last dragon died during his reign. He saw what dragons did to his kingdom and his family during the dance. He witnessed his uncle's dragon Sunfire devour his mother Rhaenyra right before his eyes. When he saw Rhaena's dragon mourning for the first time, Aegon said, "Get that wretched creature out of my sight." He was also called the Broken King and suffered from depression. He was joyless in the wake of the Civil War's destruction, and had a darkness within him that never went away. So while Elric suffered from physical disabilities, and Aegon from depression, both characters were brooding kings who despised the parts of their culture that brought them glory and power. Besides the lack of red eyes, Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince, is very physically similar to Elric as well, especially Matt Smith's Daemon, who wears a suit of armor shaped like a dragon, just like Elric does. Elric's armor is a heavy black steel, forged with spells that make it impenetrable, said to even protect its wearer from the cuts of Stormbringer and Mournblade, the twin magical blades of the story. Daemon's armor in the show might be made of Valyrian steel, but we don't really know. The Dragon Keepers, who train and look after the Targaryen dragons in King's Landing and on Dragonstone, have armor in the books that is made of gleaming black steel and crested with rows of dragon scales. Daemon and Elric's similarities end with their hair and their armor though. In fact, Daemon's personality is closer aligned to Yyrkoon. Both Daemon and Yyrkoon are rival family members to the king, and both are suspected of plotting for the Iron or Ruby Throne. Daemon and Yyrkoon are true warriors, both of whom want to be rid of the weak king and restore their respective kingdoms to their former glory. Daemon's motivations in the book are less clear, but in the show, despite all this, he still loves his brother Viserys. Yyrkoon has no love for Elric. Melnibonéans lack the humanity, empathy, and capacity to love that Valyrians have. In the Elric stories, the cursed Black Blade Stormbringer is a character in its own right. The magical sword, and its sibling Mournblade, had been used for centuries by Elric's ancestors. Their original purpose was to fight chaos with chaos, to check the power of the dead gods. Eventually, the swords were locked away in the pulsing cavern, a place made of writhing flesh, like a breathing organ. Yyrkoon lures Elric into the cavern with the intention of pitting the two black blades against each other. Yyrkoon took up Mournblade, and Elric took Stormbringer. The cousins dueled violently, their rune blades singing as they clashed. When wielding Stormbringer for the first time, Elric felt a demonic need to fight and kill, to take vengeance, to spill blood, to send a soul to hell. Stormbringer is sentient and wishes to control Elric and make him kill, but Elric chooses not to let the sword control him. Kill Yyrkoon he would, but not at the will of another power, not to give sport to these alien swords. The relationship between Elric and Stormbringer is weird and manipulative. Stormbringer gives Elric immense power, enough power that Elric no longer has to take his medicinal herbs to stay alive. So long as he has Stormbringer, he has his life. However, the Runeblade lusts for souls, and has a habit of turning Elric into someone he's not, a rash, violent, vengeful brute. Blackfire and Dark Sister are the sibling blades of House Targaryen. They're not sentient like Stormbringer, but they are forged with Valyrian spells, and used by Targaryen rulers. Blackfire is the sword of kings, and simply wielding it is enough to give claimants to the Iron Throne legitimacy. Another bastard son of Aegon IV, Daemon Blackfire, took the sword's name for his own, and was called the King Who Bore the Sword. Many lords flocked to his black dragon banners, and had he not possessed Blackfire, he simply would not have had the same support. There is even a reference to Stormbringer in Game of Thrones, during Joffrey's wedding feast, when his grandfather Tywin gives him a Valyrian steel sword made from the melted down greatsword ice. Joffrey asks the crowd for name suggestions, and someone calls out Stormbringer.
Such a great sword should have a name. What shall I call her?
Stormbringer!
The writer of this episode, George R.R. Martin. Stormbringer's source of energy is the souls it drinks after slaying men, demons, and gods. A strangely literal connection can be made to the creation of Lightbringer, and potentially Valyrian steel. The following theory comes from the user Genghis Kazoo on Reddit, and their post is linked in the description for further reading. Lightbringer is a magical sword said to be wielded by Azor Ahai, who used it to end the darkness of the Long Night. Azor Ahai has long been prophesied to return, born amidst salt and smoke, and will pull Lightbringer from the fire. Melisandre, a Red Priestess of R'hllor and magical Shadowbinder of Asshai, believes Stannis Baratheon is Azor Ahai reborn, so she gives him a sword she calls Lightbringer, and he pulls it from a fire. This isn't the real Lightbringer though. It's an illusion by Melisandre. The sword is wrong. It gives off no heat. It's an empty glamour. The real Lightbringer, if it did exist, was forged by Azor Ahai after laboring for half a year, tempering blades first with water and then a lion's heart. Both attempts failed, so with his third attempt, he plunged the sword through the heart of his love, Nissa Nissa. Her blood and her soul all went into the steel. Nissa Nissa died, and Lightbringer was born. Only death can pay for life. The creation of Valyrian steel is a mystery, but George Martin has mentioned that magic plays a role in its forging. Some readers believe that not just any magic, but blood magic is how it's made. It would make sense, especially since we're told that all Valyrian sorcery is rooted in blood and fire. Also, consider how blood magic results in the creation of other things, like Daenerys' dragons, or how Shiera's sea star bathed in blood to retain her beauty. But what if the creation of Valyrian steel relied not only on blood magic, but on souls as well, just like Stormbringer? In the Dawn Age, long before the rise of Valyria, Ironborn were said to possess foul black weapons that drank the very souls of those they slew. Just like Stormbringer drinks the souls of whoever it kills. These Ironborn weapons were also black, just like Stormbringer and Valyrian steel. Further, it is theorized in-universe that the Ironborn descended from visitors from an unknown land west of the Sunset Sea. Directly west are the lands of Asshai, the Shadowlands. How far west is unknown, but Asshai is west of the Iron Islands, and presumably accessible via ship. In Asshai, buildings are made of a greasy black stone that drinks light and keeps the city dark and foreboding. The ruler of the Iron Islands sits upon the sea stone chair, which is made of a mysterious, oily black stone. Some theorize that its origin can be traced to visitors from the west, beyond the Sunset Sea, most likely from Ahai. Valyrians were said to have originated as humble shepherds, who were one day visited by people from Ahai, who taught them how to tame dragons, and presumably other magic as well, perhaps shadowbinding. If this is true, and of course we can't know for sure, it seems to create a direct link from Ahai to both the Dawn Age ancestors of the Ironborn and to the Valyrians, meaning that those black weapons used during the Dawn Age, the ones that drank souls, are potentially precursors to Valyrian steel, and that same soul-drinking magic remains within the spells of swords like Longclaw, Blackfire, and the two swords reforged from ice, Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper. So how would the souls be acquired to create Valyrian steel? The first option is obvious: the thousands, or probably millions, of enslaved people in Valyria who perished in the mines throughout the millennia of the Freehold's existence. Qyburn believes that surely something of our souls must remain when we leave this life. And Marwyn the Mage agreed with him. Marwyn spent 8 years traveling and learning in the East, and spent time with Shadowbinders in Ahai, including Mirri Maz Duur, so Marwyn would know a thing or two about this stuff. The second option is through the magic of shadowbinding, which might allow one to capture the soul left behind by a deceased body. When speaking about dead men's boots or bones, Melisandre says that a man's shadow can be drawn forth from such, and draped about another like a cloak. Could Valyrian sorcerers have extracted soul residue from dead people and draped it within their steel? If not shadowbinding, then perhaps blood magic was involved in fusing souls with steel. After the doom of Valyria, smiths in Qohor tried to replicate Valyrian steel by sacrificing slaves. Perhaps blood sacrifice, in addition to an entire soul, were used in the creation of Valyrian steel. When Daenerys burned Mirri Maz Duur alive, and thus hatched her 3 dragons, perhaps it was actually the souls of Drogo, Rhaego, and Mirri Maz Duur, all of whom burned together in that pyre, their souls that created life, not just their blood. 3 souls for 3 dragons. It has no real impact on the plot if Valyrian steel blades drink the souls of its slain foes. A lot of ifs would need to come true, but there are just enough clues to think about though. And if true, it creates another similarity between Elric's world and Westeros. I'll stop talking about this now, but I might make a whole video about souls, blood sacrifice, and Valyrian steel. If you're interested, let me know. Azor Ahai is a legendary figure, and exists in different forms throughout the world. In some places, he is called Eldric Shadowchaser. In others, he is called Yyrkoon the Hero, Eldric and Yyrkoon, or Elric and Yyrkoon. Azor Ahai wielded Lightbringer, Elric wielded Stormbringer. These naming similarities are probably nothing more than a nod by George R.R. Martin to one of his favorite stories. But if you want to speculate wildly and have some fun, read another one of Genghis Khazu's theories linked below. They talk about how Azor Ahai is really not a great guy, and that his soul-drinking sword, like Elric's, is really a hint that Euron Greyjoy, with his own potentially soul-drinking Valyrian steel suit of armor, is shaping up to be the villainous reincarnation of Azor Ahai. During my research for this video, I came across a random forum post that perfectly sums up Elric. The user said, "In many ways, Elric is the velvet underground of fantasy, to Lord of the Rings Elvis. Very few people listened to Velvet Underground, but everyone who did started their own band. And that list includes bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam, who actually did find mainstream success. So even though Elric was never as popular as Aragorn, George R.R. Martin happened to read both. And A Song of Ice and Fire is peppered with influences by Michael Moorcock's Elric of Melniboné. He was the brooding, silver-haired dragon lord before Aegon and Daemon and Bloodraven. If you have any thoughts about Elric, let me know in the comments. Also let me know if you'd be interested in a part 2, since there's a lot more to cover here regarding how the themes of destiny and free will present in Elric are also present in A Song of Ice and Fire. Thanks for watching and subscribing.